Hi everyone, thanks for joining us. Our next video podcast, which is quite new to us still. Today I've got a Mr. Steve Briggs, which I'm sure everybody will know. Steve, good morning. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right, thanks, Mark. Yeah, very good. Yeah, just sitting
Good.
here relaxing. I've been watching a few videos, but I'm ready to chat.
Good. So I know we did have a catch up prior to this. I know you've been out fishing recently and stuff. So I presume this is an off day, is it? But it looks like you're at home.
Yeah, I'm sitting here in my front room. Yeah, a day off, but I've got stuff to do. I've got video editing today and a little bit of writing to do. So, you know, even if I'm not on the bank, there's always stuff to do, isn't there?
Yeah. So if you're not actually fishing, you're either talking about or writing about or
Yeah,
videoing
yeah,
about
that's sort of how
fishing.
it works. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I was quite shocked when I look back. The last time we did an interview, it was issue 77. We're now coming up to issue 114, and it was July 22. So
Yeah.
I was planning to have a catch up, but I think 3 years is probably going to take up more data than I can spare. So just give what from your perspective. So what's your? Can you just tell us a bit about your association with Nash and how long you've been with Nash? I mean, obviously everybody knows you through Nash, but how long were you fishing before you got with them?
Oh, well, obviously I was fishing for donkey's years. I caught my first carp. Now it's like 52 years ago, something like that.
Wow.
So, Nash wasn't about in those days. Um, I've had some association with Nash for a long time. I caught my first carp on a Nash boilie that was rolled and given to me by Gary Bays out of the factory. It wasn't a bought bait. They sort of got
Right.
me on their baits, and this was 93, I think it was 93, 94. So that went back a long way. And I used them, but in those days I was sort of flitting around. I wasn't sort of nailed down to any companies exactly. I had a bit of bait off several companies back in those days, but Nash was one of them. Um, when I signed up with them sort of full time, I'm not sure exactly how long. It's something like about 15, 16 years I've been with them now.
Wow.
Like, you know,
And is that what you is so is fishing what you do? That's how you earn your living from doing what you do with Nash.
yeah,
It's your job as such.
yeah, it is my job. I still, people have asked me, "Are you retired? Have you won the lottery and all that?" And no, this is my job. I still have bills to pay and rent and, and all those sort of things. And yeah, that's how I make my living. So yeah, it is my job.
Because in the UK, there's not many anglers in your position, is there? I mean, probably a handful that we could just name. Obviously, are well known, but you're different in the respect to somebody like, say, for example, Alan Blair, because Alan works for Nash. He's got an office job. He's got a role within the company, whereas yours is a purely fishing aspect.
Yeah, I mean, it is that way. Yeah, and it's for me it's all about sort of managing my life and managing what I do with my life. I mean, I don't get as much money as what people think I get. Like most people say to me, "Oh, you won the lottery, or where'd you get all this money?" And blah blah. And most of them earn a lot more money than me. Do you know what I mean? But it's
Right,
just how I
right.
manage my life. My life revolves around fishing, and everything I earn really goes back into fishing. I don't have a mortgage, I don't have kids, and so I can spend everything I earn on fishing. I don't sort of have a brand new car every 3 years and things like that. Like
Yeah.
what people treat as normal life, I stepped away from that. And I had full-time jobs years ago. I worked in a factory for 20 years, and
Oh, okay.
um, yeah, and that wasn't for me. I hated it. and,
So,
and
so you've almost like retired from working life, but to step into a, a different full time life, which most of us associate as with our pastime and our hobby. So, but on that, how often are you actually out fishing? Because you look at social media, you look at your video stuff. People would assume, oh, it's every day, it's constantly.
Yeah, people get a wrong perception because, obviously when I'm posting stuff, it's only about me fishing. so they think I'm fishing all the time. But I actually had a
Mm.
count up, as I knew this was one of the things you was going to ask. I actually had a count up, because I didn't know how many nights I've done this year. And it's 73. I've done 73 nights this year, and that
Wow.
includes like filming trips. I've done 3 1 week filming trips with Nash or other people, which is sort of work, but then it's all work. So every night I've been on the bank, I counted up. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, I think today there's been something like 226 days so far in
Yeah,
this,
I just yeah.
and I've fished for 73 of them. So it's quite a lot. It's more than maybe, it's a little bit more than if I fished every weekend if I was at work. So it's probably a lot less than what people think.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm quite sure. I thought like you say, there's 220 odd days. I thought you were going to be at least, you know, half, maybe three quarters of those. So, um, but so when you're not on the bank, um, I presume fishing is still a central focus of what you do.
It is, but again, I go back to that sort of managing my life again. I could fish every day. I'm lucky enough to have a partner, Joan, who loves fishing as well. So we could be
Yeah, good
fishing
old
all the
Joan.
time. But it would be burnout. I know
Yeah,
my own levels, what I can do, what I can't do, and as much as I love fishing, if I was fishing every single day, I would just burn out. I know I would. So I don't do that. And, there is a life, there is stuff to do. I've got to do the garden, otherwise the neighbours complain. And, and there's things
yeah.
like that. And,
So
managing the.
in
Sorry, mate.
respect, sorry, that's okay. In respect of with Nash, then are there certain commitments that you have to do in terms of putting out videos or product information, or is it kind of just are you left to your own devices and you decide what you're going to do on that level?
No, well, I do have a contract that I have to
Right.
keep
Okay.
to, and that requires me to do, well, videos. Although I've got my own YouTube channel, it's written in my contract to produce videos for that, and which
Oh,
I
okay.
do. So, although it's mine as such, it comes under doing it for Nash. It's one of the things I do for Nash. And then there's attending shows and shop days and like Nash Days France. I was out there for 3 days, and we pay all that ourselves. Nash don't pay for that. I pay
Oh,
my own
right.
travel and tunnel and all that. Um,
Oh,
but they wouldn't complain too much if I didn't do that. But I feel that that's part of my job, and and
right.
I like doing those things. I like doing those things for Nash. I don't mind doing them.
Yeah. So, so well, I presume. I mean, I'm guessing I'm right. When you're filming with Nash, then it's the Nash videography team and their media guys that are there. But so when you're doing your own stuff for your YouTube, is that just you? Is that you and a camera, and you have to do the editing and everything yourself?
Yeah, I do literally all of that myself. When I'm with Joan, she's the cameraman. So when we're abroad, I set the camera up, and she's behind pressing the buttons and everything else, making sure I'm in the frame in focus. But otherwise, when I'm on my own, yeah, I mean, they're all filmed myself and they're all edited myself, basically.
Wow. Okay. And that's you. I take it you just do that at home. You're not going into the Nash office to use their kit and stuff to do that.
No, that's all done at home here.
And are you self-taught on all that? I mean, obviously, I mean, we fished over in Cassien probably around in the same sort of time frames in the the early 80s, mid 80s, and into the 90s. But obviously, we had it was 35 mil film in your camera, and if you had a good fish on there, you had 20 shots of sort of the dog in front of the fire or whatever it was just to use the roll up so you could get it in and get it developed. I mean, now it's you can take and retake and whatever, but uh, I presume are you self-taught with all the technology that's there? Because the kit's so amazing now.
I'm literally self-taught on everything, because I mean the first articles we wrote, they were pen and paper, literally writing with a
Mm.
pen and paper, and someone had to translate that, and so it moved on to sort of, computers. I taught myself how to use a computer, and then it went on to digital cameras. I had to sort of learn how to use those.
Wow.
And the same with the film editing. Yeah, everything is, I've had to learn myself, self-taught. But I enjoy doing it. I've got the drive to do that. It's not, I don't sort of think, oh, I've got to try and do that now. Like, I
Yeah.
enjoy all that. I like that side of it.
And so on the tech, so while we're talking about tech, what on the tech side of things, what sort of tech are you an anti-bait boat? Are you no drone? Or I mean, obviously drones for filming, that's what they were, that's what they're fantastic for. But they're also great for finding the carp in, especially on public waters or big waters. Are you a fan of that kind of thing? Do you use any of that tech yourself?
Yeah, I must admit, I use it all at different stages. Yeah, I sort of move with the times. I think if you don't move with the times,
Mm.
you get left behind. I always quote the thing that, like 40 years ago, people were moaning that bite alarms were cheating because you could sleep at night and just get woken up by a bite alarm. And it's a fair point, because before that you had to sit there and watch your indicators all night. And
Yeah,
so gradually over time things become accepted. Bait boats are becoming more accepted. People that wouldn't use them 10 years ago are using them now.
yeah,
And, you know, you can't fight progress. You can
mm,
moan about it and do your own thing. Fishing allows you to fish however you want. You don't have to use all that stuff.
yeah,
But I
yeah,
like using drones. I don't use them to find fish. I like them for the video effects of aerial shots and all that. Bait boats, yeah, I've used them to find fish in good areas. I've used echo sounders for donkey's years on boats. It's just a smaller version of that, really. So
yeah.
yeah,
That's the bit that kind of always surprises me, because the people there's so many people that are against bait boats, but they've obviously never fished from a boat. I mean,
well,
there's certain waters you've got to do it, haven't you?
I literally had a message about 3 days ago from a bloke on one of my videos where I was using a boat in France, and he said, "Well, that's cheating. That's not fair on the fish using a boat to go out and get it and place your bait." And I said, I I don't know you, but I know you've never fished abroad on any big waters, public waters with snags. And he didn't come back because obviously he hadn't. And I said, well,
Yeah,
if
yeah,
you could fish those waters, you'd get it. You'd understand why you can't fish them without a boat. It's just a different type of fishing to what you've done.
yeah,
Because you don't understand
absolutely.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
there's a time and a place for everything like that.
But but it doesn't I don't think it detracts from the skills that you still need. I mean, your skill set has been built up over such a long period of time. I mean, the changes, like you say, if you don't embrace them, you're kind of left behind, aren't you? I mean, how do you feel about watercraft and the availability of information where people are saying I'm fishing such and such on peg so and so, anybody, what's the best way of doing it? Do you think social media and these booking apps have taken away from certain skills, or do you think it's enhanced the fishing?
Well, that's a really good point because you talk about using like the technology, drones, bait boats, and all that to make life easy. And what you just said there, the social media aspect and all the information out there, that makes it so much easier for people today because they don't want to put in the work. Not many people want to put in the hard yards and the work. They just want. I get messages every day, where people can't be bothered to Google something, so they ask me, and then I'm googling it, and I'm thinking, hold on a minute, I'm just doing the work for them. Um, but that's what That's today's, without sounding derogatory, that's today's carp anglers. It's like how many wraps and what swim and what bait and all that, and they're not doing the work themselves. They're expecting someone else to do the work, and then they just jump on the bandwagon. So it's that to me is just as bad as people moaning about drones and bait boats and all that. It's the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, fishing abroad and fishing in the UK are massively different. Um, and do you think that as fishing in the UK become a bit too restrictive? There's so many rules and bans on this and bans on that, or is that just a necessity to protect the fish, protect the fisheries from people who haven't learnt the basics of it are just, like as you've just said, asking you, well, I'm going to fish this, and or they want a 50 pounder, before they've even caught a 10. What's your sort of take on that, on that sort of aspect?
Yeah, basically, I think there is too many rules in place for most times. It was one of the reasons I started fishing in France all those years ago, because it was the space and the freedom that you had to just do your own thing without someone looking over your shoulder and saying, no, you can't use that line, you can't use that hook, you can't do this. And, you could just fish how you wanted to
Mhm.
fish. And, I was never going to harm the fish or do anything
Yeah,
other than catch them and appreciate them. So,
yeah,
um, don't get me wrong, I get fishery owners, and I I would probably be the same if I owned a fishery and saw people handling my fish. I would come up with all sort of rules to protect them. So I
yeah.
get it, but as a fisherman, I want freedom, space, and freedom.
And that's obviously, as we sort of mentioned about. I mean, we've mentioned the one that I think probably the most famous water in France, Cassian. But you fish them all. But I know that your horizons go way beyond France, don't they? I mean, you tell us about some of the places that you have fished.
Yeah, well, I fish so many places now. It's funny when you talk about you look at people talking on Facebook and they say, "Oh, well, I've got a UK PB and a French PB." Like, it's France and UK and that's it. And these
Mm.
days, I find myself, I'm driving through France and out the other side to go to other countries. I mean, we go back to the 50s thing. I know I've caught 50s from 18 different countries. So
Wow.
you take England and France away, and that's another, 16
Yeah.
countries. Besides the others that I haven't caught 50s from. So um, yeah, I've fished a lot of places and a lot of nice places, and even if there's a language barrier, like Poland, for instance, Poland, there's a language barrier. Not many speak English, and I don't speak Polish, but there's that common language of carp fishing. We
Yeah.
can get on with people like House on Fire.
Mm.
And the Polish people are so nice. They're so friendly they like the English. So, I love traveling to those countries and meeting the people. It's great. It's a big part of it for me.
Yeah, and so the sort of social aspect is as much of the fishing there for you as well. Is that sort of fair to say?
Yeah, we've got friends in all sorts of countries now, in places that we've been to. We've met people over the years and stayed in contact, and that's a big part of it. Is going back to see those people because they're always asking us to go back. And the problem is there's so many different places. It's fitting it all in. That's the problem, the biggest
Yeah,
problem.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, that's a big part of it for us. And Joan's more of a people person than me. I mean, when we go on trips, obviously I'm going for the fish.
Mm.
Jones these days is more going to see the people.
Right.
Because they're our friends, and we've got them in all these countries, all over the place. We've got friends, and it's lovely to
Yeah.
go back and see them.
Although I was going to say, I mean, Jones had a fair share of some big carp over the years, hasn't she? I mean, it's
Yeah, absolutely.
she's the she's good behind the camera, but she's also very good in front of it on the rods as well, from what I've seen and when I've spoke to her. Um, so, because one of the sort of few anglers, I suppose, that do so much fishing outside of the UK as well as a high amount inside. Do you, in terms of setup, do you sort of have like a UK setup and a foreign waters setup, or do you just does everything just transfer across, or how do you sort of go about that?
That's the hardest part of my life. It really is,
Right,
because yeah, the English setup is very much different. It's a barrow, it's a Hyde XL, a short sort of session bivvy. Rods and reels tend to be the same, but rigs tend to be a little bit different. But the cooking gear is different. When we go abroad, there's a bigger set of cooking gear for a longer stay.
right,
Um, so the hardest part of my fishing is turn around in the van. I've got to literally get everything out of the van, pack a whole different set of gear. And yeah, that's the part that does me head in. That's the hardest bit, is unloading everything. And then, because I can't just come home from a 2 week trip abroad and then shoot off down for a couple of nights, because, I've got all the wrong gear,
Mm.
and it all needs changing. So, yeah, that has to be done. I do have different rods and different sets of gear for the different styles of fishing, basically.
Right, and obviously, when you're fishing from an inflatable, when you're actually out in the, do you? I know because of doing it, it adds a really different sort of dimension to the fishing. But I think all your videos and all the stuff you see the sort of pros do make it look so easy. But actually, fishing from a boat's not as. Have you just built that experience up over the years where you've had to do it, had to learn it?
Yeah, I mean, everything I do these days, I've got better at it. And it is through years and years of experience. I mean, I'll be the first to admit, when I started out, I wasn't much good at I couldn't catch a carp to save my life when I first started out, but I slowly but surely I've learned lots of things, and they sort of stayed with me. And actually, we did a week's filming in France, with Alfie Willingale and Will Ray, and it was a brilliant week on a very weedy lake with boat work. And
Mm.
I don't know when the film will be out, but it went really well. It was a really good week's fishing. But basically, Will don't use a boat. He didn't use a boat at all. Alfie was very new to boat work, and of course, I've done it for years, so it was in that respect, it was interesting to see how it all went.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, it was. I sort of forget how much I've done it, and it was very. I don't like sound like I'm blowing my own trumpet, but it was very easy because I've done it so many times to just
mm.
go out and find spots and catch fish.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it was you. The film will be out soon. It showed it all, but that experience definitely comes in handy for sure.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, I know from experience, and I'm by no means an expert at boat fishing, but I was just shocked. It's actually harder work, isn't it? I mean, for me, I was partnered up with my uncle the very first time I did it. There was fishing a double swim, so we were helping each other. So 8 rods to put out morning and 8 rods to put back out in the evening. But the problem is we couldn't wind him from the bank. We were having to, get over the top of the lead to bring it up because of the snags. It's actually, I mean, do you enjoy that aspect, or is it just you just kind of think, oh, it's a means to an end? But because you do seem to kind of really be comfortable with that and enjoy that whole thing, whereas most people just
I Yeah,
putting your rods out's a pain in the backside.
no, I absolutely love it. And
Mm.
you forget the lines. You talk about putting all the rods out and all the effort, but you've got to miss all those lines as well. And
Mm,
yeah,
yeah.
most times I do it, and not always. But no, I absolutely love it. I love being out on the water in a boat. It's one of the best parts of fishing for me. I just really enjoy it. And yeah, it can be hard work. I mean, one of my last trips away was on like 9,000 acres of water, and it was really shallow. So you had to get out like 350, 400 yards to find the weed beds and a bit of depth
Wow.
where the carp were. And that's all right on a nice, flat, calm, sunny day. But when you get a wind up and a crosswind or whatever,
Yeah, yeah.
it is hard work. And yeah, like you say, it was just me, so 4 rods. It's a lot of work, but enjoyable work. I'd rather be doing that than working in the factory, what I used to do. So
Yeah. And the other aspect then to the fishing, after we've already spoke about you doing your own filming and stuff like that. So how many do you do this? How many cameras do you sort of have that you've got set up? Do you try and just keep it to the minimum, or do you just go with whatever the situation sort of requires?
yeah, I mean, I've got quite a few different cameras and lenses. Uh, what I use, what I take with me. But in actual in a situation, say where I've got a fish, it's normally only 1 or 2 cameras set up at a time. I might have a camera set up on the rods, a bite cam, say. I'll have a GoPro for putting on my head if I get a run and playing a fish. Whereas I'll have a proper camera set up on a tripod for filming a fish. They're all different cameras and whatever. I've also got a Sony sort of handy cam, which has got a really good zoom. So if I need to
Right.
zoom a long way, I've got one of those. So I've got quite a few different cameras, but tend to only use one at a time normally.
Right. So I'm presuming not just, just setting that up takes as long as setting your rods up then as well. It's just it's an added dimension that most anglers wouldn't even have to deal with, isn't it?
It is the area. I mean, there's a lot of work goes into making it right. You know, it all looks very sort of simple and straightforward in, when it's actually finished and edited
Mm.
and all that. But yeah, the lighting's got to be right, the sound's got to be right. You know, that's getting the right mics. I've had to do that as well. Um, but it's an enjoyable part of it for me. You know, when you're on the bank for a week session, there's so much time when nothing's happening, and it's nice to fill that time a bit
Mm.
with filming or whatever, and it's nice to film a fish when you catch one. So it fits together quite well. It's an enjoyable part of it for me.
Yeah. So do I presume like the videographers and stuff that you work with that are with Nash and other companies, do they pick your brains in terms of catching carp, and you pick their brains in terms of using all the equipment?
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, I suppose there is a bit of that go. Definitely from my part. Yeah, I'm always looking at. I mean, most of the time, the equipment they're using is out of my range. Do you know what I mean? They're using
Mm.
like proper filming equipment, whereas mine is sort of stuff that anyone could have out on the bank. Um, but yeah, I do very much watch what they're doing and take on board what they're doing. And I suppose yeah, they same the other way. Yeah, yeah, it works both ways, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm. When I've watched people film and stuff, and you just think, well, even guys that just got their own YouTube, but they're so competent with the kit. And I mean, I've over the years I've tried it. I've had a GoPro set up on the rods, and you get a take, and I forgot to turn it on, or I've left it on and the battery's died, and it's just it like you say, when from our perspective watching the film, it looks easy, but yeah, it's kind of far from it. Just one of the things you just mentioned there about when we were talking about setups, you were on about rigs, and I know over the last few months there's been seems to have been a lot of debate and a lot of things on other podcasts and articles and social media of all these different, uh, I just there's that many names for these different rigs now, bungee rigs, and obviously you've got the twig thing and in terms of all that, what do you use? Are you a sort of trying to advance the rigs you use and redesign, or do you just what do you
No,
do?
I mean basically it's one of those experience for me. It's one of those experience things again that I've been doing it that many years. I've been through that rig stage.
Mm.
Um, and when you're not catching fish, is it the rig? Is it and you find yourself going round and round in circles. And um, I've got that stage where I'm very happy just using a handful of rigs, two or three different rigs. That's all I
Right.
use. The rig to me isn't the most important thing when it comes to catching a carp. Um, for me, it's
Okay.
bait. You don't catch anything unless the carp wants to eat your bait. And
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
seen all sorts of stuff around saying, "Well, carp will eat anything." Well, they will at certain times,
Mm.
but you try catching. I know with Nash bait going, I know I've caught over 150s on scope at squid alone, and
Wow.
that is Gary Bays's uh, thinking, and development on bait. I'm catching him on his through his thinking on
Mm.
bait. Um, the rig just has to work. The hook has to be sharp. It has to be strong enough. The way I look at a rig is it's got to land me the biggest fish in the lake if I'm lucky enough to hook it.
Yeah.
The bait is going to get me the bite. The rig has just got to land me the fish. So it's a sharp hook, a strong hook length, and yeah, it's just got to work. So I've been through all of that technical and bungee rigs. I was probably one of the first people to use a bungee rig, and
Yeah. Yeah.
um, I've sort of come out the other side, and don't worry too much about rigs these days.
Right. Okay. So, in terms of hooks, do you have I mean, a particular pattern that you stick with, or do you use whatever you feel suits the fishing at that time?
A little bit. I mean, what I would say is there's lots of hook patterns out there, and not all hook patterns suit all people. I have
Mm,
seen that loads of times where someone will swear by a hook, they never lose a fish on it, and other people lose half a dozen on the same hook. So
mm,
it is a little bit personal, the choice. But since the long shank claws came onto
mm.
the scene, the Nashy ones, I've not used anything else. I mean, we all lose fish. It's going to happen, whatever you use. But I think I'd landed the first 30 fish I hooked on those. And that's, they're the best hooks I've ever used. They're so good. Um, so that's what I use all the time now. I mean, it's not an advert. It's just what I use and how good it's been.
Yeah.
They really are good.
I mean, I was fortunate enough a couple of years ago to actually do an interview with Mark Vuson, and he took me through. I met him it was at Carp Den Bosch, and we did the interview then a few weeks later for the magazine. But the conversation I had with him around the development of the claw was just, and I have to say, I mean, yeah, it's definitely not an advert, but it is an endorsement because I absolutely love. I won't use anything else now. I think it does every aspect of the fishing I do. Um, the long shank I've yet to use. I've got some finally, but yeah, they're a difficult hook to get hold of. They're obviously in high demand. But yeah, Mark Vuson. I mean, what he doesn't know about hook development probably hasn't been written yet, has it?
He's a really clever guy, isn't he? And a really nice guy. I actually met him in Slovenia through a German friend of mine. We went out to fish with a German friend of mine, and Mark Vusen was his friend.
Oh,
And
right.
and he said to me, "Oh, I speak with Kevin quite often." And I thought, "Really? Blimey!" And then obviously Mark is now Mark Vusen. He's a big part of Nash. But
Yeah.
yeah, he talked to me all about his view on hooks and the development. And yeah, but I mean, blimey, he's such a clever guy, really is.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, and got such a passion for it as well. It was, I say, it was a real learning curve for me, and to get to interview him and ask him some technical questions, and it was really incredible. But yeah, I just think it's just an interest. I presume, correct me if I'm wrong, but I presume you tie your own rigs.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, always
Yeah,
tie my own rigs. Yeah, they're pretty simple. Any rig's got to be sort of fairly quick and easy to tie. I don't have lots of spares normally tied up in my box. I will. I'll sharpen hooks if I'm sort of if it's the middle of the night and I've had a fish. I'd rather sharpen a hook than tie a new one because it
right.
just easier at the time. But out of choice, I'd rather change the hook to a new one. But you know, middle of the night, I'm anyone for an easy life, so
Yeah,
I will sharpen it.
yeah. Anything to get back to that heated blanket. I know.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same. So it's an interesting point, as I say, just because rigs just seem to be the development around rigs just seems to be, as you just said, it's going around in circles. It's just trying to improve on something that has been working for years, and just I say, just seems to be a bit of a hot topic at the moment. But in terms of other gear, what's your go-to UK rod? What would you use on a sort of average water here?
For 90, probably 95% of my fishing, I use the scope 9 footers. Because
Right.
most of my fishing, yeah, I mean, obviously abroad it's boats. Over here, like yesterday, I was on the crayfish pool at Halton Complex, where I
Mm.
was using a bushwhacker baiting spoon on there.
Right. Oh, okay.
And it is something that gets levelled at me. Do I ever cast and all that? Yeah,
Mm.
well, I do. Um, but it's the casting is the least efficient way of fishing for me. It's the least efficient way of presenting a bait, and I'm not out to impress anyone with me casting. Cast 130 yards to a spot. I just want to present a bait properly and fish. Effectively.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but there are times where I need to cast. I mean, there was a trip to Poland earlier in the year, and it was all fishing like 100 meters plus, and you was only allowed to cast. So I spent
Right.
a week casting there. Caught loads of fish, 50 odd fish, up to 60 pound odd. You know, so yeah, I'll still do it, the casting and all that.
I
But
bet.
yeah,
Have you had some tips off Jermaine? I mean, he is one. He
Jesus,
can.
I
He
mean,
can. That boy can cast a rod, can't he?
it's incredible. It's incredible. There's, you know, and well, I can't do that to save my life, but to watch it, I mean, it can cast something like 270 meters. I mean, that's like double what I can do.
Yeah, it's absolutely unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, and it's all technique and speed. You know, you've got to have that arm speed. It's a
Mm.
bit almost like boxers. You know, you can train all you like, but that hand speed
Mm.
always gets you through, and you know makes the difference between the average fighters and the good fighters, for instance. And it's the
Yeah,
same with
yeah,
casting. You know, he's able to get that tip speed. I saw it years ago with people like Rob Malin. Rob Malin was a
yeah,
really good caster, and when I saw it, it was frightening to how he never snaps off every time. I don't
mm.
know, but yeah, he got it out there. When you expected the lead to land, it was like another 10 seconds. You think, wow.
Yeah.
But I can't. Yeah.
I mean, for me, well, I'm not a big caster by any means, but my fear is like blowing the rod up. You know, just that's the. I mean, when you watch, I watched Jermaine with the scopes, the new scope range and stuff. It's incredible what he did with those rods and what they can do. I mean, it's so because a lot of people, I get ridiculed because I fish 9 foot and 6 foot rods. Everyone calls them the kids rods and the toy rods. But I actually really enjoy fishing with them. I feel, unless if, a bit like you, I don't need to cast and I don't need to hit this. If I need to go distance with a 9 foot rod, usually I can use a boat or a bait boat. Um, but yeah, I do think they've become more accepted. I mean, they've been widely copied, haven't they? So, shorter
Absolutely.
rods have become more accepted.
It's not until you use them. I found it actually very easy to go down to 9 foot rods. I found it harder
Mm.
to go back to 12 foot rods afterwards. They feel so cumbersome and top heavy.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, I mean, don't knock it till you tried it because I just really enjoy using them. They feel so much more, well, just nice to use. So
Mm.
much more usable than a big rod. And yeah, I love using them. Like I say, 90% of me fishing I do with 9 foot rods now.
So, I mean, that's one of the kind of leads me on to my next thing, really, because that's one of the it's one of the changes, like technology, the changes has kind of been accepted. So yes, you like it or you don't, but it's been accepted because fisheries allow it and places allow you to do these things. Going down to these sort of shorter rods, which initially were kind of ridiculed and people weren't taken as, even to the point where they didn't take you seriously. I know of a water down south that's actually banned anything below 12 foot. I
Really?
mean, yeah,
That's a
because
strange one.
yeah, exactly. Because he's got a weedy water and he doesn't think the rods can cope. Is what I can get the gist of. I
Wow.
find it a really odd thing why you can dictate, fair enough, dictate about leaders and tubing and hook sizes and barbs and micro barbs and no barbs and all this kind. But the length of the rod, I find that a bit odd. But it's his lake and he can do what he wants.
Exactly. It goes back to that rules thing, yeah, I don't want to fish there then.
Yeah, no, exactly that. That same as you, I'd feel awkward with the 12 foot rod now,
Yeah.
but yeah, that kind of leads me on to changes, and not so much over the years because you've been doing this such a long time. There's been masses of changes,
Mm.
and the majority for the good. But have you noticed any significant differences? I mean, I don't know how many sort of day ticket waters you fish, but have you noticed since lockdown, since the COVID pandemic, have you noticed any significant changes, good or bad, for carp fishing specifically?
Um, I think it's sort of settled back down. I mean, I do fish day ticket waters. I fish Thorny Weir quite a lot. It's quite close to me here, and they're nice lakes. I enjoy fishing them.
Oh, okay.
Um, and there was the period, obviously, around COVID and straight after where everyone wanted to go fishing. All of a
Mm,
sudden, that was the thing to do. Um, and to me, it's almost settled down a bit to how it was before. I mean, I
right.
don't fish them enough, perhaps, to sort of say that there's been major differences. Um, but yeah, I mean, they're sort of busy-ish. They calmed down a bit to what they were after that straight after that COVID time. Um, yeah, it's perhaps a tricky one to say because I tend to spend most of the time keeping myself to myself. Like even the last few days, out of the lakes on the Horton complex, I literally picked the one with no people on. Not because of
Right,
the fish,
yeah.
because of the people. So yeah, that sort of sums me up a bit, I suppose. Um,
Yeah,
but
no, it's interesting. Like I said, I just because I mean there was, like you say, there was a boom because fishing. I think fishing and golf were probably the only two things that we could do with any sort of amount of freedom. Um,
yeah,
but I've just for me there seemed to have been the surge then of these swim booking apps where you book a swim weeks in advance on a walk. I find that hard to comprehend because it kind of defeats everything I've been taught over the years about laps of the lake and everything else. If you're booking a swim on a lake for a particular 3 weeks in advance, but then I suppose that's just like going to a commercial where you have to draw your peg out of a hat when you get there. And a lot of
well,
these French trips, where you go on the van and they take you to the water and you get there and there's 10 strangers all meeting up and you draw for your peg. It's
it sort of depends on the water as well a bit. I think.
yeah.
I mean, it's been going on, for years, really. All the rainbow trips, like Rainbow Lake in France, all of that was swims that were booked 18 months, 2 years in advance.
Right.
But it worked there, because there you had time to think about your swim, prepare for that swim.
Mm.
Um, and there it sort of worked. So, yeah, it takes all that watercraft and finding the fish sort of out of the equation.
Mm.
But it's always sort of been there. It has
Right.
sort of come into sort of English fishing a bit more, booking up swims. I suppose it's transferred across basically, from that sort of style of fishery.
Mm.
Is it ideal? No, obviously not. But there's so many people fishing these days that it's probably the only way of securing the swim. Sometimes, so many
Yeah, I
people
was I
want
was
that.
going to say that for as much as I don't I don't fish those sort of waters, but where I need to do that anyway. But I, I think there is a necessity, and I think that's just through changing it, just through so many people. I mean, you look at complexes like Lydia and Norton Disney, and
Yeah,
um, they're just and Bluebell, for example. I mean, they're just so many anglers on those waters. Um, and a first come first serve basis, I suppose, doesn't really work as well now. I know that some of the waters still do that, but yeah. So in terms of your sort of the year ahead, have you got pre-planned trips now, like for the UK and abroad, or do you just decide a few weeks in advance? How do you plan for what you're
well,
going to do?
yeah, all of those. There's all sorts. I mean, I've got trips booked as far ahead as 2027 in the diary.
Wow.
Um, yeah, just because that's how some work and others don't.
Mm.
Next year I've got weeks booked in different places, and in and around that, there's all sorts of different stuff to do as and when it comes. Like
Mm.
uh, end of May, going into June, I had literally 4 weeks in France. That's 72 nights, 73 nights I've done this year. A lot of
Wow.
it was taken up in that, but it's just it all sort of, it wasn't planned that way.
Mm.
But it started off with 1 week, and then the Nash filming week came up, and it ended up we was away for a whole month, 4 weeks. But then, like now, until I've got a 2 week trip coming up in September to Bosnia. That's my next
Right.
book trip away. But until then, I'm sort of free to do my own thing, and I will go fishing. I want to try and do a bit on the canals. I'm quite interested in doing a bit on the canals. Other than that, Thorny Weir and Horton Complex, but there's nothing sort of set in stone. I've got
Mm.
4 weeks just to please myself, if you like.
Right. Yeah, I saw some of your social media stuff where you're out on your push bike. I think that
Yeah, I
was
really
that
enjoy it.
canals and rivers looking for some carp.
Yeah, and you know, that's some of the stuff I'm not doing when I'm not out on the bank with the rods
Mm.
out. That's what I'm doing. You know, and I love getting out on the canal. I'll ride like 20, 25 miles. There's not many in this area, carp. You know, so I've got to travel quite a bit to find
Right.
them. And yeah, I mean, it's funny, you know, you go back to the social media thing. I've had a few people come on to me and say, "Oh, yeah, I quite fancy a bit of canal fishing. Where have you been seeing the fish?" And like, "Oh, yeah, I'm going to tell you." And I'm going to ride up 150 miles a week just to let you know where they are. You
Yeah,
know, so,
yeah.
but that's life, isn't it? But yeah, it keeps me a bit fit, and I just enjoy it. So that's in the diary to try and catch a few carp on the canal.
Yeah. So where exactly was it you saw those carp then?
Well, I was up in Scotland.
Yeah, I love it. So obviously the whole Nash thing. Do you have is there like one product that Nash brought out that you cannot live without? Is that because the thing that Nash have gone like for the? I love a blockhouse. I absolutely love. If I'm doing anything more than 48 hours, I have to be in a blockhouse. I'm too old now to be stooping down. Even in the new sort of the new taller bivvies, the blockhouse I absolutely love. But I do have it kitted out like I'm camping. And to be honest, if I'm not catching a carp, then I am literally camping. Do you think that companies are going that way? Do you think, is it kind of bringing the camping equipment into carp fishing? Or was that? Do you think that's we've been swayed that way, or is it just it was a market that needed to be filled because it's what now happens?
Yeah, I think demand has taken it that way, and probably a lot of that's come from the continent because when carp fishing sort of went to France and the French started to do it a lot more, it was very much a family thing for them. You know,
Mhm.
even in competitions, you know, I
Yeah,
saw
yeah,
people in competitions where they'd have the family and the dog and everything with them, and that was how it worked for them, and that's sort of transferring now. You know, years ago it was just a blokes thing because we were under a brolly in the frost and the mud and all
mm,
that. But now we go to nice places with sandy beaches, and you know, and instead of spending 2 weeks away from the family and kids, they can come with you and enjoy it. So the places, there's nice places out there, and then of course you want the equipment that's going to keep them comfortable. So
yeah,
yeah, the blockhouses and the geek, you know, there's a need for it in carp fishing. There's
mm,
the carp fishing that the single blokes do, and there's the family type stuff, you know, and there's scope for all of that in carp fishing, isn't there? You know, you can
yeah, yeah.
go whatever way you want to go.
I've spent years convincing the wife that it wasn't a pleasure to go carp fishing abroad. By no means was it a holiday. It was hard work and I was grafting. And now it's advertised as carp fishing holidays. It's like completely blown my cover. But yeah, I must admit I'm a big fan of comfort. I just but yeah, so I sort of digress then. But so, is there a particular product that you think that you could not do any trip without? You know, whether it be stuff on the bank or stuff you use. You know, in terms of your fishing.
Yeah, I mean there is stuff. I mean, well, you mentioned the blockhouse, and I've got two favourite bivvies. I mean, I've got the blockhouse for when I go with Joan, like on the big trips away, and I've got the Hyde XL, which is what I use for my own fishing in the UK,
Okay.
or if I'm just on my own, because it's just a big, you know, a big one
Hmm.
man shelter that's easy to use, easy to put up, and the blockhouse is nice and comfortable for the two of us.
Yeah.
Um, the power barrow is a big thing for me these days because
Hmm.
fishing somewhere like Kingsmead K1, you know, it's like a 50-acre lake, 50-acre lake, and you want to be on the fish. So if you see fish jumping the other side, I wouldn't want to cart all my gear around there, you know. It's
Yeah.
but the power barrow, it's easy. Put all the gear in the
Yeah.
barrow and move around. So you know that has helped my fishing a lot. Um, yeah, other than that, I mean, everything has its place and its
Yeah.
uses. But there, you know, there's just a few things that, yeah, I wouldn't want to be without those things.
Yeah, I can see it again. Power barrows and stuff. They've certainly got a place now, haven't they? It's.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
think it's. you know, it is about being ease of access and comfort. But and I know Nash really do. Have made strides to sort of cater for that market. But yeah, it's just the camping aspect and carping now just seem to go hand in hand, don't they?
They do. It's merged together a lot more. And yeah, I mean, it's all of all the companies have gradually made bigger bivvies, bigger beds, made things more comfortable, electric blankets and all that. So, it's just gone that way. The business has gone that way.
Yeah, and of course, you're never going to catch big carp if you haven't got a bivvy fan.
If it helps you sit on the bank for longer and concentrate on the fishing
Yeah,
more, yeah, then why not?
absolutely, mate. Absolutely. Look, Steve, it's been absolutely brilliant talking to you. I've got 101 other things that we could go through. I mean, we haven't even really touched on your history of fishing, and I'd love to sort of catch up with you another time and talk about some of the big European waters that you've done, and perhaps drill a bit deeper. I had a lot of things I wanted to cover today, but we could perhaps drill a little bit deeper into how you approach those waters and everything. But I think I've taken up enough of your time. I know we've been on the phone over the last couple of days as well, trying to set things up and that. So yeah, we've become proper good mates now.
I mean, this has flown by. It feels like we've only just started this, and yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I know. And
fine.
as I say, there's a load of things, but I think what we'll do, we'll save that for another time. I will
Yeah.
we'll sort of we'll drill into a bit more detail of what you do. But it's been a brilliant insight, and to have a chat with you, I really appreciate it, and thanks for your time.
I've really enjoyed it, Mark. Thanks a lot, mate. Thanks very much.
Brilliant. Thanks, Steve.
Cheers, mate.